there's a number of issues that are coming up here. Firstly, we have Pakistani workers who do not want to go home because they had good jobs in the UAE, in the Gulf states, who are now forced to go home right now. There's another massive issue which is not being discussed, which is that some of them are going home without their paid wages. And this is going to cost, thousands, if not dollars of wages that are not going to be paid because unscrupulous employers and agents have realized it's an opportunity to allow workers to go home without having to pay them. Now, what governments should be doing in this instance is actually ensuring that there's evidence provided to about who has been paid, who hasn't been paid, making sure they're paid before they go home, or provide for a mechanism so that workers who are now going home because they really want to, or because they have to, are able to pursue that justice when they get home. Right now, we're not seeing governments really come through with that mechanism. And so we're seeing many of them now going home destitute, potentially going back to debt, or even worse off than when they started before they even left the country. You also have workers who are still trapped and unable to return. So those who are unable to return at all are still finding themselves destitute. They have not been handled in the same way. They really still need access to food, housing, and health in particular. Many of them are not coming forward because they're scared about the authorities, capturing them as undocumented workers. Many of them have become undocumented through no fault of their own. And the third issue that I think also needs to be discussed is the invisible migrant domestic workers. These workers are now facing higher levels of risk of abuse because they're now further trapped in abusive homes of their employers, because lockdown restrictions now come on top of the kafala system, which already ties domestic workers to their employers.
When you think about this more broadly, who got it right? Did the UAE get it right? Saudi Arabia? Because this is an issue that's going to impact these Gulf economies going forward.
Unfortunately, none of these states have actually put forward any mechanism to really ensure that workers are going home with all of their paid wages. So right now, we're not seeing anything. What we have seen that have been good practices has been more about the countries that have sought to extend visas to ensure that workers are not becoming undocumented during the pandemic. So the UAE, for instance, Bahrain, a couple of states have been good at ensuring that they are extending visas automatically without workers having to be during the pandemic. But there were still already, thousands of workers that had already been undocumented before the pandemic and are now trapped as a result. So there's a couple of different things going on. We also saw the UAE, Saudi, several other states actually, but that said that undocumented workers, as well as Qatar, for instance, have said that undocumented workers can have access to health, that they can go to the hospital and access and be able to get treatment. But the problem is that many migrant workers are too scared to go to the hospital, believing that if they did, that they will still be captured nonetheless. So there are serious issues there's a trust deficit, obviously, for the undocumented worker population who have been abandoned for a really long time. In some countries who are not getting amnesties, undocumented workers are hoping that the amnesties will come through for them at this time. So Kuwait did put together an amnesty to allow workers to leave. Qatar has thought about doing something similar. Saudi Arabia has not yet done it. So there are opportunities where they could have amnesties to at least allow for the undocumented worker population to be able to leave safely, and where they're not having to pay for fines or for debts that they've incurred simply because they became undocumented, often by their employers extorting them for money for their visa.